We talked about the end behavior of the graphs and knowing what it's going to look like as far as which way the arrows are going to point and if it's going to go up or down or right or left or whatever. So this is even and negative. So both ends are going to point down. So that gives us an indicator of what the general shape will be. And that way we don't have to keep plotting points forever and ever. We can just, we know that once we get to the point where we're both going down both sides, that we're done. And so we'll start with an XY table. And I always plug in 0 for X first. And if I plug in 0 for X, I'm going to get 0 for Y because it's 0, 0, 0, 0. So that's my first point. And then if I plug in 1 for X, I get negative 1 to the 4th plus 1 to the 3rd plus 3 times 1 squared plus 2 times 1. So this is negative 1 plus 1, so that's 0. And then 3 times 1 is 3 plus 2, so it's 5. So 1 is going to give me a 5. And then I'll go negative 1. So this is negative 1 minus 1, so that's negative 2, plus 3, so that's positive 1, minus 2 is negative 1. So negative 1, negative 1. And then I do 2. So that's 2 to the 4th is 2, 4, 8, 16. So that's negative 16 plus 8. So that's negative 8 plus 12. So that's positive 4 plus 4. So that's positive 8. So that's my next point. As you can see, I'm still trying to find my shape here. I don't know which way I'm going yet. So I have to keep plugging in points. If I do negative 2, I have 16, negative 16 again, plus negative 8. So that's negative 24, plus 12, so that's negative 12, minus 4 is negative 16. So negative 2 is going to give me that negative 16. So that's 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13. That's way down here. And if I plug in negative 3 and do all of this work to it, I'll get a bigger negative number. Oh. So I'm just going to put more negative. So at this point, I know that this is going to go here because it's just going to keep getting more negative. So now I just can work on this side. So I'll put in a positive 3. Okay, 3 to the 4th, I have 3, 9, 27, 81. So it's negative 81 plus 27, which is, I'm going to do this on the calculator so I don't mess up. So I have, so that would be negative 54 plus 27 plus 6, so negative 21. So positive 3 is going to give me negative 21, which is way down here somewhere. And so I'm just going to put in a 4 to make sure I don't turn back around at this point. Okay, so 4 to the 4th is 256. There's no way this is going to become positive. Do you guys see that? So that's also going to be a negative number. So I know now that this side is doing this. So I'm going to connect my dots. And, you know, my lines aren't pretty, but you get the general basis of the shape of the graph. And I have 2 zeros here and here. Okay, so we're even again. So both my arrows are going to point in the same direction, and it's positive. So I'm going to be going up at the ends. So if I do this one, if I plug in 0 for x, I'm going to get negative 6 for y. Okay. If I plug in 1 for x, I get 1 to the 4th minus 1 to the 3rd minus 2 times 1 plus 4 times 1 minus 6. So that's 1 minus 1, so that's 0, negative 2, positive 2, negative 4. Okay, so as you can see, I'm still moving up on this side. So I'm going to do a negative 1 over here and see what happens. So this is positive 1 plus 1, so that's 2. Plus 2 is 4. Minus 4 is 0. Minus 6. So negative 6. Oops. So here's going to be a curve right there. I plug in 2. So I have 2, 4, 8, 16. Minus 8 is 8. Minus 4 is 4. Plus 8 is 12. Minus 6 is 6. Okay. Negative 2. So that's 16 plus 8, 24, plus 4 is 28, minus 8 is 20, minus 6 is 14. And I'm going to do negative 3 just to see if I come back down at all. That's not. So this is 81 plus 27 plus 6 minus 12 minus 6. So it's way up here. It's highly positive, right? So it's off our graph. So I think we're good to say that this is this end. And we can just work the positive side now. Okay, so I have 81 minus 27, which is 54, minus 6, which is 48, plus 12, which is 60 minus 6, so that's also highly positive. So we'll just stop there. There's something called the location principle. And that says the zeros occur between sign changes. Sorry, zeros. So zeros occur between sign changes. So if you make a table of values, every time you have a sign change on your y's, there's a zero between those numbers that occur on the x's. So if we take this function and I start plugging in values and I'm working it all out, 1 gives me negative, 1 gives me 1, negative 1 gives me negative 7. Actually, you know what? Sorry, I'm going to change that. I'm going to start with a negative 2. If I do negative 2, I get negative 29. If I do negative 1, I'm going to get negative 7. If I do 0, I get 1. 1 gives me a 1. 2 gives me a negative 1. 3 gives me a 1. And 4 gives me a 13. We have a sign change here. And here. And here. Now this was an odd function. So it was odd and positive. So I knew I was going to have 3 or 1, 0. So once I found the 3, I'm done. So here's my 3 zeros. So my zeros are between negative 1 and 0, between 1 and 2, and between 2 and 3. So I'm going to cross the graph between negative 1 and 0. So I'm going to cross the graph right here. I'm going to cross between 1 and 2. So here, and I'm going to cross between 2 and 3. So here. Well, I'm not going to plot this negative 2, negative 29. That's just ridiculous. I'm going to do negative 1, negative 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 0 is a 1. 1 is a 1. 2 is a negative 1. And 3 is a 1. And I don't have to graph any more of these points because I know I'm going to cut through here, here, and here. And so my solutions, or my zeros, are approximately, that's the symbol for about, between negative 1 and 0. So we'll just say like negative a half, between 1 and 2, so about 1.5, and between 2 and 3, so about 2.5, give or take. Those aren't exact, but they'll be somewhere close to that. All right, so if we do another one, I'm even and positive, so my ends are going to look like this. Okay, so if I plug in, I'll start with negative 2, I'll do negative 1, 0, 1, and 2 to start, and then I'll expand out if I have to. Okay, if I plug in negative 2, this one I don't have pre-done, so we're going to have to actually do it. actually minus 2 plus 1. Okay, so that's 16 plus 24 minus 8, so that's 16. Wait, hold on. So 16 plus 24 is, hold on, 40 minus 8 minus 2 plus 1. So that's going to be 31. Okay, so here I'm going to have 1 minus 3 minus 2 minus 1 plus 1. So that's negative 4. If I plug in 0, I get 1. If I plug in 1, I get 1 minus 3, which is negative 2, minus 2, which is negative 4, plus 2, which is negative 2. So 16 minus 24, which would be negative 8, minus 8, which would be negative 16, plus 2, which would be negative 14 plus 1, so negative 13. So right now I'm still going negative, so I have to find that positive again because I know that both my ends need to point up. So I have to keep going positive. Okay, so the 81 minus 81, okay, minus 18 plus 3 plus 1, so that's negative 14. What are the fourth? So that's 256. And then I have 16, so minus 32 plus 4 plus 1. So that's 37, so I'm positive now. And I have sign changes occurring here, 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 and here. That's 4 sign changes. 4 is the maximum of the number of zeros I could have.
And the sign change is for the y side, not the x side?
For the yes, for the y side. So when I plot these, I don't really need to plot this negative 231, but I know between negative 1 and negative 2, I'm going to cross the axis here somewhere. Negative 1 is negative 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I know I'm going to cross the axis again between negative 1 and 0, because at 0 I have a 1. So I'm crossing the axis here. And then 1 gives me negative 2. So I'm crossing here again. And then I'm going negative. I don't need to plot both of these because it's 13, 14. They're right next to each other. So I'm just going to go over to 3 and plot that one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then between 3 and 4, I'm going to go back up again. So I'm coming down, I'm going up, I'm coming really far down, and then I'm going really far up. And my zeros are somewhere between -2 and -1, so I'm going to say 1.5. They're between 1 and 0, so I'll say -0.5 again. Between -1 and 0, and then between 1 and 0, so I'll say +0.5. And then between 3 and 4, so about 3.5. Graphs can have a relative minimum, a relative maximum, both. They can have an extrema or not. Only even graphs will have an extrema though. This graph here is odd because you can see the arrows are pointing in different directions, so this one has no extrema. I'll draw an extrema for you. And then turning points are the points where the graph changes directions, and those happen to be the minimums or the maximums or the extrema. This would be a relative maximum. It's the highest point in this general vicinity. And this would be a relative minimum because it's the lowest point in the general vicinity. Extrema occur if I have a graph, and let's say it does something like this. This is the extrema. It's the absolute minimum of the graph. This is the lowest point that it goes, or if the graph was flipped, it would be the absolute highest point of the graph. And all of these are turning points. We're going to estimate the relative maximum and minimums. So again, we're going to put in our lovely t-chart. And I'm going to start at -2 just to begin, and then we'll go further if we need to. Okay, so if I plug in a -2, I get -17. And if I plug in -1, I get 0. And if I plug in 0, I get 3. And if I plug in 1, I get -2. So what we have so far is a sign change, and a sign change. Okay, so when I plug in 2, I'm going to get -9. Now I know at this point if I have 2 sign changes and I had this odd, I'm going to have 3 or 1, 0. I can't have 2, so I need to find that third sign change. So I have to keep going. So if I plug in 3, I get -12. If I plug in 4, I get -4. And if I plug in 5, I'll get 18. There's my third sign change. Okay. Also, because of the end behavior thing, I should have pointed this out. I knew that this side was going to go like that and that side was going to go like that because it was odd, positive. So that's why I didn't keep going on the negative. I kept going on the positive because I needed to go back up. So here are my sign changes. So what I want to do next is I'm going to try to find between the sign changes. What's the largest number? 3, so that's going to be a relative max. And between these sign changes, my smallest number is -12, so that's going to be a relative minimum. And my zeros are going to happen between here and here, here and here, and here and here.
Wouldn't 18 be your biggest number for your relative?
Well, no, because we are going to keep going from 18, if I keep going, it'll just keep going higher and higher and higher positive. There's no, in an odd function, there's no maximum and minimum because they'll just keep going on forever and ever in opposite directions. So you have relative, you have parts where like when you get these loopy things, because the graph is going to do this on the ends, so it'll always continue to go positive and it'll always continue to go negative. But then you have these relative maximums and relative minimums. And that's with an odd. If you have an even, you can have a straight minimum or maximum because evens go, the arrows go in the same direction. So it'll always go up both sides or always go down both sides. And if that happens, you do get a minimum or a maximum. But with odds, you don't get a true minimum or a maximum. So if we graph this, I'm going to go out by twos just to make it wider and it'll look better. Okay, so at -2, I'm at -17. I'm not even going to graph that because that's way down here somewhere, and I'm just going to do that. At -1, I'm at 0. At 0, I'm at 3. So 1, 2, 3. Actually, I can't do this one that way. Sorry. I'm going to have to do this one 1, 2, 3. At 1, I'm at -2, so 1, 2. At 2, I'm at -9, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 3, I'm at -12. 4, I'm at -4, so 2, 3, 4. And 5, I'm at 18. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not even going to graph that. I'm just going to go like this. So at -2, I know I'm going way down here. At 5, I'm going way up. I'm crossing somewhere between 0 and, or sorry, 0 and 1, because 1 came to -2, so I'm just going to do that kind of a something. Then I'm going to come down here, and I know I'm crossing somewhere between 4 and 5, so I'll come up like that. And I'll connect this over here. This is my max relative. This is my relative minimum. And my zeros are here somewhere.